Hey everybody, it's Eric from EPAutos.com, your libertarian car guy. I wanted to talk briefly about something that I caught in the news, and you may have as well, which is that due to waning demand in battery-powered vehicles, General Motors is going to be laying off permanently about 3,400 workers at the battery plant that used to be the Detroit Hamtramck plant that was converted over to make battery-powered vehicles. Now, that's not the aspect of it so much that I wanted to talk about, meaning the fact that there's waning demand for EVs and these workers are going to lose their jobs. The part that I think is interesting, because I think it's socially and politically explosive, is that the people responsible for these atrocious malinvestments in battery-powered devices, meaning the CEOs of the big car companies, for example, Mary Barra at General Motors, they're not facing any meaningful consequences for the decisions that they made to invest in the manufactured demand manufactured by the federal government via the regulations that effectively forced the manufacturers to make these things, or at least that they assumed there would be this market for them, because the regs pretty much made it impossible, as they were, to produce vehicles that weren't electric, while at the same time pushing alternatives to them off the market. It was this sort of double tap thing that was going on during the Biden years. And of course, Trump has dialed that back. He ended the $7,500 tax kickback. And, there are the additional compounding problems in that electricity now costs as much, essentially, as gas. So there's very little economic advantage to buying an electric car, particularly when you factor in the much higher buy-in cost. So people aren't buying it, which is the long and the short. But it's pretty self-evident that the decision makers at the highest echelons of corporate America rarely, if ever, have to face any personal consequences for what they do. So on the one hand, you've got these 3,400 people who don't have jobs anymore and were probably making just enough to pay their bills, certainly weren't becoming massively wealthy working on an assembly line. And then you've got Barra and her counterpart at Ford, the same thing, Farley. These people make double-digit millions. I think Mary Barra's current annual compensation, all told, is nearly $30 million, which is, that's a lot of money. You work it out, and probably she takes home more in a couple of weeks than an assembly line worker earns all year, and that's probably lowballing it. And put it another way, in 1 year, even after taxes, that's generational wealth. Imagine if you could work for 1 year and see your bank account swell by, let's just say, $10 million. Okay, let's say that it's a 50% tax rate. So the $30 million that you're paid, and it's more than that. I'm sorry, I haven't either had too much or not enough coffee. Let's just say that rather than grossing $30 million, you only took home only $10 million. You'd be set for life. Not only would you be set for life, but your kids and their kids would be set for life. And that's 1 year. Imagine being paid $30 million for, say, 5 years or 10 years. Anyway, I'm the farthest thing from a commie. Anybody who reads my stuff and has listened to me talk on the air knows that. I'm a free market guy. I believe in capitalism. What I don't believe in is this sort of consequences-free corporatism that we have right now, where a CEO of a major company can be paid extravagantly and far more than any of their predecessors were, without consequences when they mess up. And it was a big mess up to malinvest the massive amounts of money in this EV boondoggle. And I just think, it would not only be right, it would be sensible if at least some compensation cut were in order. I think they're playing with fire here. I think all they're doing is feeding into the actual leftists, the people like Bernie and AOC, who will be able to whip up the justifiable resentment and anger of average people, particularly working income people, when they see this stuff going on. When you've got people at these, at these high levels of the corporate echelon being able to do basically anything and continue to get paid, no matter how badly they run the company, they still get paid. Nothing ever happens to them. But, you and me and anybody else who even drives without wearing our seatbelt, cop sees us and we're going to be in trouble. And, if we screw up at the job, we'll get fired and we'll have to figure out another job. And, and then when we get there, probably we'll be expected to show up on time and do a productive day's work. And if we don't, we'll get fired again. So anyway, I've got an article up at EPAutos.com forum that gets into this. You might be interested in that. I hope you'll stop by and check it out, and we will have more for you again soon.